Hello everyone. Today we are actually at our GRMCA headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. We have the pleasure of spending some time with industry veteran Michael Legrand. I met Michael at our first technical committee meeting probably about 2 years ago, and while I've begun to get to know him, I really don't know his story. Michael is currently a senior technical services manager at Thomas Concrete. I'm eager to learn more about his nearly 40 years in our industry. Michael, thank you for taking time out of your busy day to visit with us. Please introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell us about yourself, where you grew up, your early life.
All right, so as you mentioned, I'm Michael Legrand. So my early life began in Texas. I was born in Dallas, Texas. Spent many years there. Growing up, basically, my family was kind of nomadic through the first few years. We moved quite a bit from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, lived in Euless, Hurst, Grapevine, Richland Hills, and then my parents were transferred to Georgia in 1968. So that being said, I had a very transitional elementary school. I went to 5 different elementary schools. So didn't make too many long-lasting friends in the elementary school. So a little bit about me. I was a massive stutterer. I could not speak. Really, I could not speak without stuttering. The best I can tell you is I sounded more like Mel Tillis.
Yes.
So obviously, being young, people would pick on you, and the other disadvantage was I had buck teeth and stuttered. So,
oh my!
Yeah, so I was Bucky the stutterer. So I was picked on quite a bit as a youngster. Kind of outgrew that. We moved to Georgia in '68. I was in 5th grade and still had buck teeth and stuttered a little bit, and then we moved again to some condos in Austell, little townhomes, and I started playing football when I was 12. So being the picked on kind of guy, I had a lot of rage.
Yes.
Rage, so football, I was able to get rid of that rage a little bit. So my teammates didn't like me practicing with them because I took out all my rage on them. Just plowed them.
Right.
In practice, no mercy. It was no mercy even on my teammates. So that started a trend where I slowly stopped stuttering. I still stutter a little bit now. If I get nervous or not focused too much, I'll stutter and correct myself. So a lot of times you'll hear me go a little bit. So other than that, I played football up till about 14. Went on to middle school. I didn't play any sports in middle school. I was over in Mableton. So I stopped playing Little League football at about 14 when I went into high school. I wanted to play football in high school, but entering 9th grade, I'm a shorter person. I'm 5'8" now, but back then I went into high school at 5'4" and about 120 pounds.
Right.
I'm not looking to get squashed by a 200-pounder plus.
No.
So I swapped my athletic abilities to soccer and track and cross country, and I was decent in those sports, but never excelled.
Right.
I was middle of the pack, if you want to call it that. And I wasn't the fastest, I wasn't the slowest.
Right.
And I was middle of the pack. And our Coach Sanford, really good coach. I was in a 440 relay. I ran a 440. I did the long jump, little 5'6". At this time, I'm 5'6" ish. I was able to. My longest jump in long jump for my little short body was 19 feet 3 inches.
No kidding.
No kidding. I was like, how the heck?
How did you do that?
I have no idea.
Like a gazelle.
Yeah, it was like just launched. So, and then a buddy of mine, my first job was at Six Flags, but a buddy of mine was a gymnast in Tennessee when he moved my next door neighbors. So my family finally settled down in Mableton area. So he was my next door neighbor, and we became really tight. And he showed me how to do some gymnastic stuff. So on the after practices, I'm running for miles and miles and doing all those things. We were doing round off back handsprings on the football field, and our coach Sanford was watching us, and he came up and he said, "Boys, have you ever pole vaulted?" I said, "No, sir." He said, "If you can do that, you can pole vault."
Wow.
So he taught us how to pole vault, and me and my buddy Patrick went to state finals with 1 week of practice in the pole vault.
No kidding.
I vaulted out at it wasn't very high vaults. It was a little over 8 feet, and Patrick went into like middle 9 feet, and then we were out. But that was cool.
That is very cool.
Yeah, it was cool to do that with such short practice. So and then after high school, I went in the military.
Yeah.
Spent 4 years in the Air Force, stationed in Dover, Delaware, which is not the greatest place to be, but
right.
And then I got transferred to Charleston, and in that time, got married. So been with the same wonderful woman for the last 50 years.
Good.
Yeah. So
50.
50.
Oh my.
We've been married for 47. We were together 3 years prior to marrying. So we've been together for 50 years and have 3 wonderful kids. Got 6 grandkids. My oldest grandchild is 16, and the youngest is about 3 months, 4 months. So nice spread in between.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's really been blessed.
You sure
To
have.
be honest with you.
Well, you and I are the same age, and I've not been married. I've been married. Let's see. I celebrated 39 in the spring, and I've got 6 grandkids. So we're kind of we got
on
a lot.
the same page.
We're on the same page. Well, tell us, get us now into the construction materials world. Talk to us about that.
Well, after I got out of the Air Force in 81, I was a job hopper for about the first 4 or 5 years. 81 was a downturn in the market. I had a job lined up with Seaboard Coastline Railroad before I exited the Air Force. They went into a massive layoff in 81. That's when I got out in 81. And basically had a pre-hire about 3 months before all this went down, and I got out in August, and it was down the tubes. So my job hopes with the railroad just vanished. So I did a little scrambling, jumped around a little bit. I was still getting paid for about 2 months with the Air Force because I got out, still had some vacation left or time off. And I job hopped for about the first 4 years. I had retail jobs. I had worked at Kroger for a little bit, worked at Turtles Records and Tapes, if you remember those.
Yes, I do remember
I worked
Turtles.
there. And then I got into the sling manufacturing industry. Cobb wire rope and sling. They made the wire rope slings and nylon nets. I went into the manufacturing of those, and I stayed with 2 different companies for a couple of years. And then out of the blue, my brother-in-law worked for UPS, so it's kind of a transition. I job hopped from the materials to a quality, not a quality control, but a manager, inventory manager for a company called Soft Cell Computer Products. And then my brother, here's where it transitions into the construction.
Yeah.
My brother, my oldest brother, asked me if I would like to join him in a small construction venture that he was going to set up. And I said, sure, it's an opportunity. No benefits. I had benefits through where my wife worked, so it was just a small construction outfit. A year in, I bought a house, and then in that same year, the business just went tanked.
Oh boy!
So I had to find a job. My brother-in-law worked for Southern Concrete Paving, a division of Williams Brothers back in the day. So I called him up and I said,
"What year was that? You think?"
85, 84, 85-ish.
Yeah.
So I called him up. I was in desperation. I needed a job. I had just bought a house, and I was desperate. And I said, and his name's Junior. His nickname's Junior. You got any openings? He said, I got a labor job. I said, I'll take it. How much does it pay? I jumped on it. I needed a job. So we negotiated a little bit. I stayed there for 8 months. That was my first entry into the concrete world, and it was rough. As a laborer, like concrete is rough.
Yeah.
I started as a laborer with a come along, doing all the labor things.
Wow.
With a come along, and then I graduated from come along to the sawman.
Yes.
So I was the last guy on the job, sawing concrete in the middle of the night. And then we had a boss that was not the greatest. He was very particular, liked to really put people down and really give them the work over if they didn't. So he used a lot of language that I'm not going to say right now, but talking to me, and I said, I don't want to be talked to like that. I told Junior, I said, I don't think I'll be back. He said, are you quitting? I said, no, I'm quitting. I'm not quitting. I'm leaving. And I left that industry, and I already had a job lined up with someone else, and then my neighbor across the street worked for law engineering.
Yes.
So he said, I don't know if they're hiring. This was in 1987. He said, I don't know if they're hiring, but you can go talk with them. So sure, I made an appointment, but I had another job lined up with a whole different industry. So I went and talked with Bill Whitaker at Law Engineering, and it was short time. He said, what are you looking for? And I said, I'm looking to plant some feet, grow some roots, and I said, I want to learn.
Right.
And he said, we're not hiring, but I'm hiring you.
Wow.
So that's how I got into the third-party testing, and they treated me really well.
Yeah.
They put me in, quote, the easiest part was concrete.
Yeah.
Testing. I'm going from not knowing anything about testing to now I'm testing for projects that are multi-million-dollar projects, and I'm thinking, God, I need to do this right. So I got certified ACI, the level 1 concrete testing technician. I got certified, and I was doing some work at GLG Grand Hotel. It's the 50-something story on 14th Street with a massive arch about 200 feet off the ground. So that's where I was. That was about my third, actually it was my last project with law engineering, and then I went into their environmental group. But there, the guys from Allied Ready Mix, Whitley and Mark Walker, they were constantly in and out of the job site. I was the only technician on that job site from law, so they were in and out, asked me, would I be willing to transfer, look into the ready mix side of the industry? Sure. Opportunities. I've never really said no to an opportunity until I got into the ready mix side of it. And then in '93, I was hired with Allied Ready Mix as a concrete technician because Mark and Whit liked the way I handled myself on the job. So worked with Marvin Hardy my first, and Bob Ferranti. They were my entry-level mentors, if you will. So it was a long transitions between 93 and then 2005. RMC was in some trouble in Europe, and then Cemex got involved, and Ready Mix USA got involved in 2004 and 2005.
Right.
And so Cemex owned us one time, Ready Mix USA owned us one time, and then Cemex owned us again. So from about in 2004-ish, 5-ish, it was Cemex, and then or USA.
Yes.
And then Cemex owned us. I transitioned into 3 years ago, 2020-ish.
To Thomas.
To leaving Ready Mix because I was 62 and older, 10 years or more of experience, or 10 years or more of service. At that time, I was in for 20-something years already. And they offered me a get-out-of-jail card, a get-out-of-jail-free card. So that get-out-of-jail-free was basically what Cemex called a voluntary retirement program.
Yes.
In essence, it was a voluntary severance package.
Yes.
So I severed myself. They gave me some pretty decent benefits for almost a year, full salary, and so it was a good work. And then out of the blue, Justin Lazenby calls me and says, "I hear you're not working for Cemex anymore, or Ready Mix."
Right.
Ready Mix kept the name; it's Cemex owns it. So I said, "Yeah, I don't work there anymore." He goes, "You want to work with us?" And I said, "I'm open for discussion." So
here you are,
3.5 years in, and here I am. So that sums up that little.
No,
history.
that's a really great story, and I'm curious to hear. I'm always curious to hear what people say about what they enjoy about this business, because let's face it, it is a difficult business. You've got a perishable product. In the summertime in Atlanta, before we started this interview, it sounded like you were talking to one of your colleagues about a potential hot load or some situation and placing all of that. I mean, it's very, very difficult business. So in spite of that, what would you say you've enjoyed about it, about Ready Mix?
One of the things that brings me the greatest satisfaction, and it happens on such rare occasions that it's almost next to impossible, but you're diagnosing or evaluating a problem on a job, and for whatever reason no one wants to listen. For the most part, it's all the Ready Mix Concrete's fault.
Right.
But given enough time and the same issues going along, all of a sudden the superintendent will get the idea that it's not the concrete, it's the place and finish, the weather, and then the light bulb clicks and they go, oh my gosh, I've been fighting this for so many years, but now I really see that it's not the concrete per se. Now granted, we have our issues as well.
Sure.
It's a mechanical process, but by and large, it's not the concrete, it's place and finish practices. Our drivers sometimes will get a little careless and deliver a wet load. And we always tell the contractors time in and time and time again, if it's wet, send it back.
Yes.
Don't use it. If you use it, you're acknowledging the fact that it's okay.
Right.
And it's not okay. Send it back. That sends a message back to the plant level, the driver level, that sending us a wet load is not acceptable. But that's I think one of the biggest satisfactions. The other thing is,
it's helped. So what you're saying is, when you are able to educate a customer and see them
do the right
thing because of understanding I hear you. That's a big deal. That's
the biggest. I think that's the biggest. The next biggest thing to me is we are taking rock sand and a powder and mixing it with water, and we're making it basically an artificial rock.
Yes.
And all the applications that this can be used, and you don't think about it when you first get in the industry. It's rock sand and cement, but there is so much science involved.
Yes.
There is so much technology involved that you can take and go down any little rabbit hole.
Yes.
I mean, a deep dive. You want to go to the chemistry side, you want to go to the admix side, you want to go to the aggregate side, you want to go to all these multiple entities, and it's even getting better now because so many other industries have byproduct that they want to see if it'll work in concrete.
Right.
So they're sending us material to our lab, like glass.
Yes.
The glass powders, the ground glass. That's relatively new in our industry.
Right.
For us anyway. So, Thomas gets a little hand on that, and we've already tested it. It looks like it may be a viable source if there's enough of it.
Yes.
So we've had people call us from Peru. John Cook and I sat. He got the phone call. He got the invite, and I said, "Do you mind if I sit in? I just want to listen."
Right.
He said, "Yeah, come on." So we sat in there and listened. The guy don't have an outlet for their cement in the United States, and they thought enough of Thomas because we are in Savannah. We have a port that if it worked out, they could ship cement in through Savannah and spread it out through our industry. So I don't know where that went. That's above my pay grade, but it was a neat scenario.
And so and I hear what you're saying, Michael. It's not a dull job by any means. Every day's a new day. Whether it's the type of job or the mixed design, special situations, special requirements. I hear you. It is. It's exciting. It's sophisticated. It's people don't, like you said, oh, you're just making rocks. No, you're a big artificial rock, but it's a very technical field and very. It can be very, very challenging, and it can put any super intelligent person. It can take you to task. So,
well, what we've seen from newer guys coming into our industry, in our department especially, that don't have any background in concrete, and we start putting things together in the lab and working with them on mixes, almost 100% is like, I never knew this was like this. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm amazed.
Yes.
You know, and then we put a high strength mix in the mixer, and it doesn't look like your traditional concrete. It looks like taffy in the mixer, and you would look at it and swear it's a 2-inch slump.
Yes.
Like curb machine, and then you stop the mixer and it spreads out in the mixer. It's completely flat. And then the energy it takes, you can't hit it with a rubber mallet. It'll push back.
Right.
You can't dent it with a rubber mallet, but you put your hand on it very lightly.
And you can depress it
and push in, and your hand is just swallowed by the concrete.
You know, you reminded me real quick early on when I first got into the business at Fulton, and I went up to, I think the PCA had that concrete up in, was it Chicago, that they did an introduction to concrete, maybe 3 or 4 days. Anyway, one of the coolest things, you know, I was a complete newcomer to this thing, but we're down in this little lab and we got a big mixing bowl and we mix up some concrete, and it's, I don't know, you know, it's on a 4-inch slump roughly, something like that. And the person there, they've got looked like a little shot glass, and they said, this is super plasticizer. They dumped that in there, and they made like 2 stirs, and it turned to soup, and before our eyes.
Right.
So that was one of my, you know, amazing.
One of those aha moments.
Yeah, aha moments.
So, you know, back in the early days, you know, master builders and everybody working with their Super Ps. I was on a job at, I don't know what they call it now, but back then it was a city block building called Inforum.
Yeah.
And they brought in a Super P, and I don't remember if it was a melamine or naphthalene type Super P. Lifespan of nothing.
Right.
So
right.
It was put it in the truck,
and
mix
go.
it up,
Yeah.
and you better get it dumped out or it was gone. So those were the early days, and now we have those that'll just stretch out. You know, we have hours of time depending on the dosage.
You know, we're really, this is a good little bridge to my next question, I think. And my next question for you is, what, as you look back over all your years, you know, in working in and around ready mix, what are some of those the big changes, you know, either in the product or process, or in this case we're talking Super P, wouldn't you say, in the admix world?
The admix world, I think, is completely, totally evolving all the time. Right. So that's the biggest changes that you'll see on a more routine, more timely. You know, they're trying to, like with 1L cement, there's admix companies trying to manage how it's gonna interact with the type 1L. So they're trying different chemicals, and I'm not a chemist, so I'm a rookie in that. Even after all these years, the chemistry is just like, okay, there's so much of it, and I was never great at chemistry anyway. So, but that's one of the biggest changes. The other thing is the green concrete. You know, that's a big thing. You know, back in the day, it was like cement, and then, you know, now we're using fly ashes of different sorts. Not Thomas, but as the industry.
As an industry, yeah.
You know, we're using type F, type C. Some companies are using, you know, the calcined clays and just different powders that are available, and the technology that follows into it. You know, everybody's trying to go green and cut back cement. How much can we cut back? You know, we have chemicals, the strength enhancing admixtures, where you can trim back a little bit of powder, and this chemical makes up the difference. Right. And we're seeing a lot of strength enhancing admixtures coming into the market. Some of them are good. Yeah. Some of them not so good.
Let me ask you this: in the realm of QC, concrete testing, has that really changed a whole lot?
No, as far as you know, that's on occasion the standards will change and they'll reword something, so hence they ever, you know, recertifying every 5 years. It's not because of major changes in the process, except for Rollometer. They did make a major change in that years ago, from adding alcohol to the top in the foam to now you add water, because the alcohol is now incorporated into the Rollometer itself, where it wasn't. It was water back in the day. So that was one of the big changes. Yeah. But all the other tests have relatively stayed the same, but with minor changes. So which is a good thing, because if you make those changes all the time, then so many people coming into the industry, the newbies, and let's face it, getting newer, better technicians or good technicians is kind of hard to find these days.
Yes.
If you find a person who's super interested but has no training, those are the best ones.
Right.
That have not been exposed to bad habits.
Right.
Those are the best ones, because we can teach them the exact right way. So that's a good thing for the standards don't change significantly, because if I make it the same, you make it the same, and 30 other people do the same thing, we should get very similar results.
Yeah, and as you point out, and the equipment, the testing equipment is generally, other than that, you mentioned the rollometer, but otherwise, it's still, you're testing air, you're testing unit weights, you're braking cylinders, and
yeah, all that's relatively the same.
So looking forward, you're not far from retirement, and but as you look into the future, what are some of the things that you see that would be, some of the bigger concerns facing our industry in any realm, whether it's quality control or any aspect, but kind of what do you see are some of the concerning trends or circumstances, or the flash, the flash thing, I think sounds like we're in a lot better shape now. Is that
right? Yes. Our supplier from Plant Bowen has a new facility up there for harvesting and recycling again, buried ash. So they have done a really good job of getting it going.
That's Eco
Materials. So they've done a super good job. We haven't run into major issues. They had a little hiccup when they first started, but that has been gone, and we're not seeing tremendous up and downs. And the air content was the one that really is technically impacted by high carbon in the ash. But what I see from my point of view is the shortages. Like if a cement mill goes down, or when National was first trying to get open, they would open, shut down. That puts a super big crimp in our market, because now everybody scrambles to a different. National goes down, people go to Bootsy. Bootsy goes down, now we go to Heidelberg. So, and then they're overwhelmed and they can't keep up. So the times when it happens like that, that's the concerns, because, or major shortages, or like when COVID hit, there was some concerns there for everyone. But as it turned out, our market didn't slow down very much, where everything else slowed down. But just material supply seems to be like on a hiccup wave. It's like they'll have major hiccups. Like today, for an example, we had one of the quarries called and said they couldn't keep up with some 89 manufacturing, so we used that material. So now we're not scrambling. We already have alternate things in place, but we have to. Everybody goes on high alert, and we start making changes.
So I guess what you're describing is the new phrase is supply chain interruptions. It sounds like.
Yes. So that's one of the biggest concerns that I see going forward. And because the industry's been around for forever. It's been here way before I was born. It'll be here way after I'm gone. So I think material challenges will become an issue going forward. We've had people say, well, like Vulcan Norcross, we have 75 more years. This was told to me back when I started. So 40 years in, do we only have 35 years left?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. So, and that's what I see as a big challenge.
Just some of those.
Not the immediate future, but down the road a ways. I think the industry might have to look at other options for aggregate. What that other option is, I don't know, because all the quarries and the sand supplies out of South Georgia, all those are on limited amounts. At some point, it's not going to be there. At some point, how far down the road, I don't know. But it will get here eventually.
It's hard to imagine, isn't it?
It is.
It really is. But you're right. There is a finite amount of
so what happens if
material.
Norcross goes down? that's a major supply of not only Thomas but the whole surrounding market.
Now, I think Norcross, isn't that the largest granite quarry in the country?
It's big. The last time I visited the Overlook, this was years and years ago.
It's unreal.
It was a mile wide and 600 feet deep.
Unbelievable.
I don't know what it is now. It's even wider and deeper, I'm sure.
So, in over the course of your life, your career, I think for everybody, for all of us, there are people that come into your life that could be a boss, could be a coworker, what have you, but that really, they really influence you. They affect the way your leadership style or how your philosophy of business, what have you. When you think about that, you look back over your time, Michael. Anybody stand out? And I know there are a lot of people. There's no question. It's hard to. But are there some, and how did they affect you?
So early on, we'll go back to early days. My mother was a major influence. I think she was a German immigrant.
Oh wow!
So she arrived in the States in '54 with my dad. She grew up through World War II Germany as a Hitler youth, not by choice.
Good grief!
So she was resilient. She's a tough woman.
Right.
She's since passed, but she inspired me to. She was tough. Now, most little Germans, she's 5 foot nothing.
Yeah.
But she's feisty.
Yeah.
She commanded respect. So she was my major first influencer. Like be tough, be good.
Yes.
Be resilient. So going into the industry, I mentioned Bob Ferrandi and Marvin Hardy. So that was my first leadership into the concrete world. And one of the stories I remember that this is back before laptop and all that. We had the big old IBM
Oh yeah.
Tabletop computers, but nobody had a laptop. Nobody had iPhones with all that mess on it. So Bob and I were going to a job, and somebody called him on the bag phone. So Bob pulled off, and he's talking to him, and I'm a casual observer at this point. And the guy says, I need a 4,000 whatever mix, and I need it to do this, this, and this. I need it to be pumpable. And Bob had one of the little old binders with the fold clips. His binder, he called it his concrete Bible. And he flipped it open, and he pulled up that particular plant's materials, and he formulated and calculated and put together a 4,000 psi pumpable mix in a matter of about 10 minutes.
Wow.
On a handheld calculator. And he called the plant back, and he says, this is manual entry day.
Right.
You didn't have the computer passing it along. He says, here's what you need: X number of rock, this many pounds of sand, this much powder, this, here's your admixture. Key it into the batch computer and read it back to me after you get it keyed in.
Right.
So the guy, and you could hear stuff typing on the background, and so the guy says, okay, I got it entered, and he read it back, and I was like, dadgum, but I didn't say dadgum.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I said, Bob, I want to know how to do that.
Yeah.
So Bob was my big influencer at
Yes.
first, showing me specific gravities and volumes, and how to work it back and forth. If you start here, you divide. If you start here, you multiply. Here's your rock volumes if you want it to pump. Here's a curb mix volume. So Bob,
he didn't keep it to himself.
He was sharing.
Sharing.
And Marvin Hardy was another one. He was so mild mannered and until he got his. He was very mild mannered, but easily riled if the situation commanded it. Yeah. So
right.
But I've worked over the years through the Allied Ready Mix. I've had all sorts of influencers.
Yes.
From the Class A, Type A personalities that you pick up little things that how they do it and how that you shouldn't do it.
Yes.
And a Type A personality is like.
It's funny you say it, because what popped into my head when I was a young engineer in a big pulp and paper mill in Alabama, I'll never forget, my boss had a sign on the wall. He had a sign on the wall in his office. He was an Auburn engineer, as I recall, but he had a sign, and it said, "No one is completely useless, they can always serve as a poor example. I never forgot that.
So I've had, I don't know, 9 or 10 people that I reported to over the years, and each one with a different personality, each one with a different set of goals and egos and things like that. So, and the military played a big part in me. I was an enlisted guy, but I had to go through NCO school, non-commissioned officer.
Right.
So I did that. And you pick up a lot of things in the military. A lot of people go, oh, the military. They teach you discipline and things like that. So, but they also teach you that if I'm going to be a manager and work with people, I got to learn how to talk with them, get to know them, know them as a person versus just an employee or something like that. So I always try to get to know the person on an individual basis and a personal basis, so they're more open to come to you and talk to you. So my old adage was, you can attract more flies with sugar than vinegar.
Oh yeah.
So if you're a complete horse's butt, no one's going to want to come and talk to you about an issue or a problem. They're going to avoid you until the last minute, and the issue may be bigger at some point because they didn't feel comfortable coming and talk to you.
Well, that's a good lead into our last question that I enjoy hearing about, and that is, you're at the end of a long career, a great career. What advice would you give to new people, young people coming into the industry? What would you offer them from your experience?
Come in with an open mind. There's a lot of like our new people come in. You have to have an open mind, and we fill them with a lot of information quickly. Don't try to learn it all at once. It'll overwhelm you.
Right.
It'll come. Learn it in short spurts. Learn something new about it every day. There's so much information and literature about our industry. The PCA, the newest edition of the PCA, Design and Control of Concrete Mixtures. Great.
Is it
great
really?
Source.
Yeah.
It goes from the chemistry, early history of concrete, showing pictures of the Pantheon and the Colosseum, admixtures, processes for place and finish, troubleshooting. It's really a great source of information. And I was fortunate enough to get edition 13, and it's a lot thinner, and that's where I got a lot of my stuff. And Marvin Hardy, back in the day, sent me to the NRMCA short course. Mind you, I was not successful in it. I was only in the industry for about a year and a half. And when you go to the short course in Maryland's Springs, was it?
Yeah.
Up there to the NRMCA, it's an intense course. So go through. I learned a lot.
Yes.
Because I didn't get the certificates. I got one of the certificates and marginally missed passing them all. But I was only in the industry for a short period of time, and I was super embarrassed. I felt depleted.
Yeah.
I felt like, oh man, I'm a failure. But thinking back, I garnered so much information out of that class. It was still successful, even though I didn't have the certificates. So I gained as much information as you can.
No, and it's funny. I've done 25 of these podcasts, maybe, and I don't know. This might be the first one with the answer about learn the product. I mean, kind of an obvious thing on one hand, but I'm sitting here listening to you, and it's like, it doesn't matter if you're coming into accounting or sales or whatever, or QC, of course,
right.
but regardless, to really get a working knowledge of the product that you're associated with, and be patient about it, because like we were talking earlier, concrete's complicated. Yeah. It's technical. So don't, you drink out of the fire hydrant, so to speak, as you learn, but just be patient and pace yourself. Huh?
Right. A lot of people that I've seen come in get frustrated because they're not picking up on it really quick.
Right.
Take your time. The industry, from our side of it, I would rather see a guy be a little bit slower paced, pick up more and more, because the slower paced you are, the more proficient you'll become at that particular, whatever particular thing you're working on. get the steps down.
Yeah.
Get them down to where you can almost memorize them word for word or perform it step by step without having to reference anything. And I'm talking specifically about, the testing aspects.
Yes.
Get that down to a science where you can run it through your head. Get down the science of knowing why we have a plastic shrinkage crack.
Yes.
Why we have a drying shrinkage crack. We got blamed the other day for a settlement crack until I drilled holes in the slab
and you could,
and took a probe rod and shoved it down the ground 18 inches.
Yes.
And then the guy went, he said, "Oh, you guys shipped us the wrong product." We go, "No, we didn't. No, we did not." Drilled a hole in it, poked it in. I said, "You got soft soil underneath the concrete."
That's a great point.
So, and troubleshooting is a little bit different. And I remember master builders used to have a troubleshooting class. I don't know if they still do, but I would say when you're in the industry, go to the ACI Lunch and Learns. There's a wealth of information there.
Oh yeah.
And have a notebook. Take notes.
Notes.
I see so many people just sit there and go,
right.
Twiddle their thumbs and they don't take any notes. And we encourage all the guys at hire, get you a notebook.
Right.
Whatever we're talking about, you take notes on.
Well, Michael, that's gone by fast. We covered a lot of territory, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come and to visit with us and share your story, and appreciate your work with the association. Michael's part of our technical committee, and are you on safety as well? Mm-mm. No, but you're definitely on our technical committee, and you've been a huge help there. So again, thank you for all the work you've done for the industry, and I sure wish you well when you do retire.
Well, I thank you for the invite. I appreciate it very much. I'm honored to be here and share my story. So, thank you.